The most powerful leader in Arabia didn't have an office, no army headquarters, and no media team shaping his image. Yet, within a single generation, he reshaped loyalty, law, and leadership itself. And here's the part that still unsettles people today. The rules he lived by look completely backwards to how leadership is practiced now. Most founders would reject them. Most CEOs would call them inefficient. Most politicians would say they're unrealistic. But those same rules built something that still refuses to disappear. And the secret behind them, you only really see it at the end. Leadership, in the modern sense, usually begins with authority, a title, a platform, a following. But when Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam began calling people in Makkah, he had none of that. No political power, no tribe willing to defend him. In fact, many of the people who would later become his closest companions were, at first, among his fiercest opponents. And yet, they listened, not because he promised them power, not because he flattered them, but because they trusted him. Long before revelation, he was already known as Al-Aman, the trustworthy one. People left their valuables with him even while rejecting his message. That detail matters more than we often realize, because the first rule of his leadership wasn't strategy. It was credibility. When Quraysh intensified their persecution, the pressure became unbearable. Families were split, slaves were tortured, some companions were killed. From the outside, this looked like a movement on the verge of collapse. And still, no shortcuts, no compromise of principles, no moral bargaining, no temporary adjustments to keep people happy. When the Quraysh offered him wealth, leadership, and marriage alliances, essentially everything a founder is told to chase, his response was calm, clear, final. If they placed the sun in my right hand and the moon in my left, I would not abandon this matter. That wasn't rhetoric, it was alignment. Because the second rule of his leadership was this: clarity before growth. He never allowed expansion to dilute purpose, never let numbers dictate truth, never reshaped the message to make it more marketable. And here's where it gets uncomfortable for modern leaders. Most burnout today doesn't come from workload. It comes from internal contradiction, saying one thing, believing another, and living a third. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam lived one life. Public and private were identical. What people saw in the masjid was the same man they encountered at home, the same gentleness, the same restraint, the same integrity. That consistency did something extraordinary. It created emotional safety. People could disagree with him and still feel respected. They could fail and still feel valued. They could walk away and still be welcomed back. When Taif rejected him violently, stones were thrown until his feet bled. He was offered retaliation, a chance to end it all in a moment of justified anger. He refused, not because he lacked power, but because he understood something deeper. Leadership isn't proven when things go your way. It's revealed when they don't. And that leads us to the third rule, the one almost no one wants to hear. He led with restraint. In Medina, he finally had authority, a state, an army, laws, enemies who openly plotted against him. This was the phase where many leaders harden, where mercy becomes inefficient. But watch closely what happens instead. He consults his companions, even when revelation supports him. He listens to younger voices, He accepts criticism. At Uhud, when a strategic decision led to defeat, he didn't scapegoat. He didn't shame. He absorbed responsibility and rebuilt morale. That moment alone explains why people would later give their lives for him. Because restraint builds loyalty. Fear only rents it. And just when it seems like this leadership style can't survive realpolitik, history delivers its test. The Treaty of Hudaybiyah. On paper, it was humiliating. The companions were devastated. Umar ibn al-Khattab questioned it openly. Terms favored Quraysh. Even the Prophet's title was erased from the document. This looked like surrender, but the ink was barely dry when the consequences began to unfold. Within 2 years, Islam spread more rapidly than it ever had before. Allies multiplied. Hearts softened. The same Quraysh who dictated the terms would soon violate them. And when Makkah finally opened its gates, there was no revenge, no purge, no settling of scores. You are free. That single sentence dismantled decades of hostility. Now pause here for a second, because this is where the modern bridge matters. Most founders today are exhausted, chasing relevance, managing perception, responding to outrage cycles that never end. Information overload has convinced us that leadership is about visibility, but the Prophet shows something radically different. Leadership is about inner coherence. Think of patience. Saber, not as passive waiting, but like a blade sharpened against a stone. Each moment of restraint, each refusal to react impulsively, shapes something sharper, more precise, more effective. That's what his leadership did. It sharpened people. It didn't make them dependent on him. It made them stronger without him. And that's why his influence outlived empires. Here's the secret the hook promised. The Prophet didn't lead by trying to control outcomes. He led by controlling himself. Credibility before authority. Clarity before growth. Restraint before reaction. That's the foundation modern leadership is missing. So, when you're overwhelmed at work, when you feel pressure to compromise, when you're tempted to react instead of respond, remember the blade and the stone. This moment isn't breaking you, it's shaping you. If you want to keep exploring this kind of grounded, historically honest insight, not to admire the past, but to live better today, subscribe to Veritas Frame. Together, we don't just watch history, we learn how to stand on it.